Uhuru comrades, welcome to the African People's Socialist Party hosted commemorative webinar of our fallen comrade, Glen Ford. This evening, we will hear from family and comrades who reflect on the life Glen Ford lived and his contributions to the freedom struggle. From the Black Agenda Report, to which Glen was the executive editor, historic firsts, mosts, and onlys are the hallmarks of Glen Ford's long career. The son of famed disc jockey Rudy the Deuce Rutherford, the first Black man to host a non-gospel television show in the Deep South, Columbus, Georgia, 1958. Glen was reading Newswire copy on the air at age 11. Glen's first full-time broadcast news job was at James Brown's Augusta, Georgia radio station, WRDW, in 1970, where the godfather of soul shortened Glen's surname to Ford. Glen Ford worked as a newsperson at 4 more local stations in Columbus, Georgia, Atlanta, Baltimore, where he created his first radio syndication, a half-hour weekly news magazine called Black World Report. In 1974, Ford joined the Mutual Black Network, where he served as Capitol Hill, State Department, and White House correspondent and Washington bureau chief, while also producing a daily radio commentary. In 1977, Ford co-launched, produced, and hosted America's Black Forum, ABF, the first nationally syndicated Black news interview program on commercial television. ABF made Black broadcast history. For the next 4 years, the program generated national and international headlines nearly every week. Never before and never since had a Black news entity commanded the weekly attention of the news services, Associated Press, UPI, Reuters, Agence France Presse, even TASS, the Soviet news agency, and the broadcast networks. While still host and co-owner of ABF, Ford in 1979 created Black Agenda Reports, which provided 5 programs each day on Black women, history, business, sports, and entertainment to 66 radio stations. The syndication produced more short-form programming than the 2 existing Black radio networks combined. Ford also produced the McDonald's-sponsored radio series, Black History Through Music, aired on 50 stations nationwide. In 1987, Ford launched Wrap It Up, the first nationally syndicated hip-hop music show broadcast on 65 radio stations. During its 6 years of operations, Wrap It Up allowed Ford to play an important role in the maturation of a new African musical genre. He organized 3 national rap music conventions and wrote the hip-hop column for Jack the Rapper's Black Radio Trade magazine. Ford co-founded blackcommentator.com in 2002. The weekly journal quickly became the most influential Black political site on the net. In October 2006, Ford and the entire writing team left BC to launch blackagendareport.com. In addition to his broadcast and internet experience, Glen Ford was national political columnist for Encore American and Worldwide News magazine, founded the Black Commentator and Africana Policies magazine, authored The Big Lie, an analysis of US media coverage of the Grenada invasion, voiced over 1,000 radio commercials, half of which he also produced, and scores of television commercials, and served as reporter and editor for 3 newspapers, 2 daily, 1 weekly. Ford was a founding member of the Washington chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists, executive board member of the National Alliance for Third World Journalists, media specialist for the National Minority Purchasing Council, and has spoken at scores of colleges and universities. And of course, we know Glen Ford was also one of the founding members of the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations. We start this evening with a small tribute video, remembering Glen Ford through photos. We say, long live Glen Ford for the African Revolution. We'll now transition to offer reflections on Comrade Glen Ford. And the first to offer their reflections, we have Chairman Omali Yeshitela, the leader and founder of the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement. Uhuru, Chairman.
Uhuru, thank you so much, Comrade Akile. And I want to really express my appreciation to all of you who were able to come on and participate with us in remembering Glen Ford. This is just one of the commemorations that I know are being done or have been done around Comrade Glen. And I know that the coalition, the Black is Black Coalition for Social Justice, Peace and Reparations will be doing another during its annual, its 12th annual, in fact, national conference, where the top end of that conference will be used to commemorate Comrade Glen Ford. And some of the people who are here with us today will be participating in that. And there are various people who have come to know, who did know Glen Ford and knew him from different perspectives and had different kinds of relationships with him. But the African People's Socialist Party wanted to say something about how we knew Comrade Glen and how that came to be and the significance we feel that he had in the struggle. And I want to say in the struggle because that's how we met Glen Ford, involved in the struggle. And when we met Glen Ford, the African People's Socialist Party, which next year will be experiencing 50 years of existence, and which was founded with the absolute intent to complete the Black Revolution of the 60s. This was the context in which we met Glen Ford. We're talking about a movement of Black people who had fought for happiness and return of stolen resources from us. And at the high tide of that resistance, that struggle, of course, was in the 1960s, not only in the United States, but people like Nkrumah and Lumumba were among those who were murdered in this struggle for our freedom. 1968 alone, something like more than 28 members of the Black Panther Party were killed by the US government in some way or another. More than 300 around the country had been thrown into jail. We faced an onslaught of vicious attacks against our movement, against our people. Martin Luther King was assassinated, talking about the 60s, Malcolm X assassinated, Fred Hampton assassinated. That was something that defined much of what that era and that period looked like, that the party was born into, and where we had committed ourselves to complete this revolution. And most of the people who are in this meeting and perhaps who are participating in some other way with the commemoration we're doing for Comrade Glen Ford will have, I think, a problem understanding just how this war that was made against our struggle, it was a war without terms. And as long as the African Liberation Movement had no discernible kind of leadership, as long as Black people had no leadership, the attack and the oppression was generalized. But at the moment where there emerged real leadership challenging the legitimacy of the relationship that we have with US and other imperialist entities, then those of us who do that, those organizations and persons who lead in that become targets. And a whole counterinsurgency program was unleashed against the Black liberation movement. That's the context. And sometimes when we have our ceremonies and we're honoring and remembering Fred Hampton, or we're honoring and remembering Malcolm X or Martin Luther King and somebody else, what really must be understood is that these brothers and comrades who died as a part of a counterinsurgent effort to crush our struggle, It was the basis for the introduction of crack cocaine into the communities that demoralized an entire African community. So it was a war without terms that we were dealing with. There was no such things as Geneva Conventions or anything like that that the US government felt it had to adhere to. And as I said, the target was the revolutionary organizations and leaders and spokespersons for those organizations. And the FBI, in one of the notorious examples that we are familiar with in terms of the war that was being made by the government against us, this thing that was called a counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO, the FBI was quite specific in what its objectives were, and it was to deal with what they characterized as Black nationalist hate groups. And because these were forces who were primarily determined to overturn this relationship, to fight for self-determination, designated our struggle as against colonial domination some way or another of our people. And so this is what we were confronted with. And the US government was quite successful in killing many of our leaders and destroying these organizations. And our party was born into this era. And for us, the problem, the issue was, how do we complete this revolutionary project? Because part of the counterinsurgency that was unleashed against us was what we call neo-colonial forces, that's white power and blackface. And usually this was something that happened through the electoral process. So that all of a sudden, the US government began to define Black politicians, many of whom were against the Black Revolution at the time, as Black power. They were against Black power, but now that they killed the real adherents of Black power, then they pushed these forces forward. So that's what we were looking at. And so the African People's Socialist Party is trying to complete that revolution. We are not about trying to just be involved in problems of lifestyle issues, or just be involved in single issues. Even though we got involved in single issues, our objective was to complete the Black Revolution of the 60s. And one of the problems that we were confronted with were two real serious problems. One was the fact that we engaged in a struggle for national liberation meant that we had to do what we could to unite the most progressive sector of the African nation in this common struggle for self-determination. And two, we had this struggle to try and reintroduce something like science into our movement, because we had reached a place where many of those who were associated with the struggle for self-determination were also forces who based much of their articulations on superstitions and candlelit ceremonies and what have you. And so to build a movement and a party and a revolutionary, come to revolutionary conclusions, we had to reintroduce a scientific approach, scientific analysis. And so we met Glen Ford in the process of doing that. We met Glen Ford, I think, first during the issues surrounding Barack Hussein Obama's election. And what we've always appreciated about Glen is because he has, really serious intellectual integrity. He's not one of those chameleons that we have known over a period of time who simply switch their positions or muddle their positions, so one is never clear what they're about. Glen was quite clear. So we met him in New York. And I think we met him at the same time Sister Nella Bailey was there. And there was this debate around Barack Obama. There was this debate around him, and we saw that there were so many people who we knew, some who call themselves communists and Black nationalists and what have you, who had really jumped into bed with Obama. So we were impressed with the courage that we saw coming from Glenn, from Nellie, and others who were able to criticize Obama, to actually come up with a concrete kind of analysis of who he was and his history, his record, and that kind of thing. And also the fact that he had no program that spoke to the interests of African and other working and poor people. So that was impressive for us. And it helped us to identify him as one of those persons that we might be able to work with in terms of creating this coalition that we call the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations. And because Glenn believed in self-determination, and some people say self-determination, and there are various positions on what that means, but Glenn believed in self-determination, and that was fundamental. And he was intellectually, his brain was like a steel trap, and he was able to put forth a position around self-determination. He could fight for it, he could defend it. And he believed in engaging in the war of ideas, not to simply allow these wrong ideas that were being put forth by the Democratic Party, by various other kinds of liberals that was defining our reality. He would do the research, he would come up with the empirical data that substantiated what kind of position he was going to be putting forward. And he went everywhere. If you listen to what was already said about his record in terms of creating and participating in journalistic endeavors, et cetera, Glenn did that because that was a part of his task, his job in terms of engaging in this war of ideas, to actually arm the African community, to be able to defend the African community. And so he was extraordinarily good at that. That was something that made him really significant to the African People's Socialist Party, as somebody that we wanted to have this relationship with. And as I mentioned, he was a person of intellectual integrity. We can know what Glenn thought about something, what he felt about something, because he would say it. And he was not like some of the others that we've known and we've come to work with, who would not say what it was they believed in, or who, if they were going to say something, they would say it behind the backs of the movement, et cetera, but Glenn would engage on the spot. And that was something that we really appreciated. So we watched Glenn engage in and going into these debates with various kinds of forces around the Obama question, because that was a serious question, because that was, like neo-colonialism on steroids. That was white power and blackface on steroids. And it was able to happen in the wake of our struggle having been defeated. And we've gone for, almost 3 generations of trying to recuperate, trying to rebuild a revolutionary movement. And that was part of what was really significant about Glenn, because he didn't come empty-handed, and he didn't come just spouting slogans, phrase mongering, and things like that. He would substantiate his position, and he would fight for it, and he would present it, and he would struggle against what he saw as encroachments on the rights and dignity of African people and of oppressed people in general. And so that was one of the things that brought us close to Glen Ford and allowed us to really have a deep and profound appreciation for him. And there were incidents where in this coalition where I remember on one occasion this organization joined in a march that we were doing, and when we got to the venue where and during the march, they made their own. They violated all the rules, all the principles that had been established for the march. And then when we got to the venue, they were allowed to speak, and they just the most disgusting kind of presentation that you could imagine, just horrible. It's not horrible in the sense that it was something that one disagrees with. It was horrible in terms of just the vulgarity that it represented, and just the nonsensical attacks it was making on various kinds of people. The kind of thing that the U.S. government has had informants to come into organizations to do in order to bring to disparage the organizations. And Glenn, was quite frank upfront, said, "I'll never get on the platform. These guys are ever on the platform again, I'm not participating in it." And so he was somebody who, when he had a criticism, he made the criticism, and he was also willing to fight for his position. Glenn and I had serious kinds of struggles. And the thing about the struggles, you could struggle with Glenn, all right, because you knew what you were struggling against, because he stood there with intellectual integrity, principle, and put forth his position. And the thing that helped me all the time is because I knew that because Glenn believed in science, I'm convinced that I'm going to bring him along to my position, because Glenn cannot and will not ignore science, no matter how passionate he may be about a question. And so that was really important for us. He was truly an intellectual warrior, and which is not to say that that was the only means by which Glenn would struggle. We're not saying that the only thing he did was to write something or to go to broadcast something on radio, although he did those things. But the thing about Glenn and his doing this is that it was the equivalent of Karl Marx's presentation that philosophers have only interpreted the world in different ways, but the point is to change it. And Glenn was one of those who would not only interpret the world, but would engage in struggles to change the world. And that was a part of what this relationship was all about. It was a dynamic political relationship, and the unity that we had politically and on principle allowed that relationship to also flower into a friendship. And there was, I think, a tremendous amount of respect that I had, the party had for Glen Ford. And he's spoken at various congresses of the African People's Socialist Party and various other events that the Uhuru movement might be sponsoring in various places around the United States. So we remember Glen Ford, and we remember him for his intellectual integrity. We remember him for his courage, because at the time when he was able to take up this struggle, join the coalition, at a time when on September 12th, in 2009 in Washington, D.C., he was there in the meeting where we founded the coalition. And in that September meeting, we also said the first thing that we were going to do is march on the White House occupied by Obama in November. And that was the determination that we made. And all kinds of organizations who were reputed to be bold and courageous and what have you, backed out, wouldn't support, couldn't join the coalition, precisely because we were going to march on Obama's White House. And this took a lot of courage on the part of Glenn. I was a part of a revolutionary organization. And my being there and being in the coalition was a part of a trajectory I've been on for a very long time. And I'm a part of an organization that exists in various parts of the world. So I can take this stance, I believe, with some a sense of security, but Glenn was an individual, though potent in terms of his position with the Black Agenda Report, but he was an individual, and he was willing to go up against all of that. And when he went up against it, he didn't just go up against it as Glen Ford, though he was an individual. That meant that institutions associated with Glen Ford, if there were going to be any punishment, would receive the wrath of our oppressors too. And in fact, Glenn was in Black Agenda Report was identified as some kind of, I forgot the characterization that they used by the federal government that presupposed that it was fake news and somehow some entity that was working against the interests of the United States government, which was probably true in the sense that the United States government is working against the interests of the people on the planet Earth, and Glenn never hesitated to get involved in the struggle to defend the people. So we really remember Glenn, and we love Glenn so much. And I'm really happy to see like the comrades who are here with us, people who knew Glenn as well, and people who have a relationship with the African People's Socialist Party that we value how you experienced in Glen Ford, and so we really appreciate that. And Sister Nia, I was talking to you about Glenn, and you reminded me so much of my daughter, in terms of how you knew your father. And you sounded so much to me when you talked about your father, as I've heard my daughter speak of me, and I've always found remarkable this relationship that can exist and often does exist between fathers and daughters. And I saw that, and I'm really happy that you are here. I think I met you first at a Black is Back event in Washington, D.C. I don't remember what year that was. It may have been the same year, but I'm not sure, that Marsha Coleman Adebayo, that I met her as well as a Black is Back event. But Glen Ford was very close to us, and he was a man of integrity. He was somebody who really wanted to approach the world in a very scientific way. He wanted us to win and to be free. And he was able to work with the African People's Socialist Party and with all the other organizations represented in this meeting on today, and all the other people who are represented here, and many, many, many others who are not here. So we've asked the people who are here now to share, your thoughts also about Comrade Glen Ford. And as I know, we all came to this relationship with Glen from different positions, but we think that our appreciation and respect for you is the reason that we would ask you to share with us on the African People's Socialist Party your memories of Comrade Glen Ford, and also to share, to join us in embracing Sister Nia, his daughter, his beloved daughter. So thank you very much, and uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman, thank you so much for opening this up. And we move now to Sister Nia Rutherford, the daughter, Rutherford, I'm sorry, of the daughter of Glen Ford. So uhuru, Sister Nia.
Uhuru, and power to the people. Thanks to the African People's Socialist Party and the chairman for hosting this tribute to the life and legacy of my father, Glen Ford. The response to his transition from elder to ancestor has been both heartfelt and stupendous. It left me wondering, did he know the impact of his work, his words, and his teachings on the movement and on the community? And many have assured me that he knew. And once I watched the videos from his 70th birthday party, where his comrades hosted and roasted him, it became clear to me that he knew. And that gave me peace. When I shared with my friend and mentor that my father was sick, he asked me, "What is your father living for?" I answered without a shadow of a doubt, the liberation of Black people, all oppressed people across the globe. That was Glen's work. It was his passion, his purpose for living. And trust me, he took his art form very seriously. He was one of the most, if not the most, disciplined man that I've ever met. He made sure that you continued to receive the issues of Black Agenda Report every week, even if it meant being published from his hospital bed. That's because he had hope. He had hope as it related to his personal health, and he had hope for Black people. When I told my mentor my father's motivation for living was to liberate Black people, my mentor said, then focus on what he loves and he will keep on living. And I did that. I supported him in the hospital as he compiled pictures for the last few issues of Black Agenda Report. I applauded him and celebrated him when he sent out the bar notification emails to your mailbox announcing that the next issue was live. And even now that he has transitioned from elder to ancestor, let us continue to focus on what will keep Glen Ford alive for all of us. And that is fighting for the liberation of Black people, of oppressed people across the world. As I said, my father had hope. His hope was reflected in his never-ending push for the liberation of Black people. That hope was demonstrated as he mentored both peers and the next generation alike. He had something to say and he wanted you to hear it. Sometimes he said what others wouldn't say. Sometimes he said what others didn't want to hear. He was bold. He was brave. He created and left us an amazing body of work to teach the next generation. He did his part. Now it is time for you to take the baton. Take the best of Glen, whatever your purpose is connected to the liberation of oppressed people. Be intentional about it. Be disciplined about it. If he were here today, he would challenge you, as he did on his 70th birthday in 2019, to describe what change and transformation looks like for the future. He said, even if you don't have power, you have the capacity to shame the people who are against our people. Don't give that up. Shame them. He said, serve the movement. He said, be involved in the creation of movement, which is so complex, yet so beautiful. So I task you with continuing your part. Consistently put in the reps over and over again, and you will create the habits and the tools to liberate oppressed people. Your body of work will speak for itself. Glen Ford's words, his works, and his teachings speak for themselves. They speak unequivocally and unapologetically to the liberation of Black people. I thank you for the love and the support you've shown me personally, my family, the Black Agenda Report family, and my father's friends. As my father would end his speeches, power to the people. Thank you.
Uhuru, Sister Nia, thank you again so much for joining us and offering these words about your father, helping us to see, this image of Glen Ford and allowing us to, just enter into this because, he is a man about business. Like you said, he is fighting all the time. We just saw. So this is, an opportunity to see, still this fighting spirit, but, through his daughter. It's, thank you so much. Uhuru. We move now to Sister Marcia Coleman Adebayo, who is the founder of the No Fear Coalition and the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition, to offer her words regarding Glen Ford. Uhuru, Sister Marcia.
Uhuru, power to the people. Thanks to Chairman Omali and the African People's Socialist Party for hosting this tribute to one of the greatest men that I've ever met, Glen Ford. Also, Nia, Glen would be so proud of you right now. So thank you for your very kind words. Glen was a man whose voice thundered with the passion of justice. His keen eyes intensified by those round glasses that sat on the bridge of his nose, right in front of his daunting intelligence. His word mastery and their unveiling of perceptions he gleaned from having been wounded by a culture bent against his people, against him personally, as when it deployed hitmen against his life's work. It was a confirmation that he was on the right track when he and the Black Agenda Report family made the government's blacklist of subversive publications. So there was anger and clarity and passion that combined to make Glen more than a little intimidating. There was his work ethic, his unrelenting discipline, his body of work, his insistence on excellence, his wise sense of humor that would catch one off guard, but always, always, always his deep and unconditional love for Black people. I met Glen after I had blown the whistle against the United States government. And it was a very difficult period in my life. But I realized that Glen and I fought the same demons. We sought the same solutions, and we bridged our initial meetings' awkwardness by sharing stories about our experiences in the Black Panther Party. He shared that Bruce Dixon, a stalwart of Black Agenda Report, was also in the Panthers. Glen was a member in Jersey City, Bruce in Chicago, and me in Detroit. I realized from the first moment that we met that we had all drunk from the deep love that the Black Panther Party nourished. It fed Glen's commitment and devotion to speaking, sometimes painful, truth to power in the Black Agenda Report. Glen refocused my energies from what seemed an inevitable downward spiral after blowing the whistle towards pouring my anger and indignation into writing for Black Agenda Report. Glen was a revolutionary. His unique contribution as a writer, advocate, as a mentor, was to lay the material foundation and provide the seeds for following generations to understand the complexity of white supremacy capitalism. His goal was to arm our community with the information necessary to fight against the most depraved, perverted, and wicked system that's ever been created. Amilcar Cabral knew, quote, that people do not fight for ideas in the sky, but for concrete ways to change their material conditions. Glen understood that through his writings, he could inspire political activism and turn what most people would consider the unthinkable into the inevitable. While other Black news outlets were experiencing a sugar high with the election of the first Black president, it took integrity and courage to take on the presidency of Barack Obama. The Black Agenda Report family told our community the truth. Glen rooted his analysis in the material conditions and restrictions facing our people under white supremacy capitalism. With Glen's tutorage, Barr exposed the crimes being committed by the Obama administration, and we took the inevitable criticism. Glen's fundamental principle in Black Agenda Report was to tell the truth regardless of the consequences. Malcolm expressed goals that Glen lived to actualize. He said, "We declare our right on this earth to be a human being, to be respected as a human being, to be given the rights of a human being in this society, on this earth, in this day, which we intend to bring into existence by any means necessary." So during the 50th anniversary celebration of the Black Panther Party in Oakland, California, Glen, Bruce, Nellie Bailey, and I realized that the US war against the Black Panther Party was fundamentally a war against teenagers and young adults. The government waged a war against a generation determined to taste freedom. It was exactly this kind of wounding and abuse by the US government, both as a teenager and later as a veteran, that informed Glen's character and also his nobility. Glen showed me Arundhati Roy, and she wrote, "Our strategy should not only be to confront empire, but to lay siege to it, to deprive it of oxygen, to shame it, to mock it with our art, our music, our literature, our stubbornness, our joy, our brilliance, our sheer relentlessness, and our ability to tell our own stories, stories that are different from the ones we're being brainwashed to believe." Glen's goal was to break the spine of white supremacy capitalism. He denied it oxygen. He shamed it, mocked it with his sheer brilliance, mentoring and encouraging anyone who could put two sentences together to use their talents to tell the stories of the depravity of capitalism and its agents, both Black and white. When I last spoke with Glen, it was after I had published my umpteenth article on the desecration of Moses Macedonia African Cemetery in Bethesda. Glen called me to discuss the article and to interview me for the Black Agenda Report radio. Other media had given the story occasional coverage, but Glen understood that the erasure, the annihilation, the casting of Black souls into oblivion is not a story to be given short thrift, but it is one that demands our undivided attention. He understood the stakes, the garish profits, the ghoulish dismissal of Black relevance, the implications for reparations. If it wasn't a big deal, he understood, they wouldn't be fighting you so hard and so ugly. I could not have imagined that that would be our last conversation. Glen's spirit reminds us of the courage, of the passion of Fred Hampton, of Bruce Dixon's embrace, of Malcolm's courage, Amilcar Cabral's brilliance. Black Agenda Report, in the purest sense, is a continuation of the liberation struggle that had started in the streets and the hearts of young revolutionaries across the country under the auspices of the Black Panther Party. Glen had picked up the mantle of Black liberation and carried it into the day he passed into eternal power. How can we, who claim to admire and love Glen, fail to now pick up that mantle and pass it on to the next generation? I did not know when I made my first tentative approach to this powerful, shy, brilliant, unassuming man that I loved him from the moment that I met him. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Sister Marcia, thank you so much for your reflections of Comrade Glen Ford. Really appreciate your words and your participation here with the African People's Socialist Party commemoration of Glen Ford. Thank you so much. We will move now to introduce the New York City Councilman, Comrade Charles Barron, to offer his reflections of Comrade Glen Ford. Uhuru, Charles.
Uhuru, comrades, I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to have some words about Glen. We had a very interesting relationship. I didn't know him as long and as deep as many of you. The chairman mentioned the debate in Harlem, as a matter of fact, that Dr. James McIntosh and Simotep had put together around the Obama question. And I remember that day, Nellie Bailey and Dharuba Ben Wahad and my comrades, they were on one side, I was on the other side, and Glen Ford. And I remember talking to my comrades and asking if they will allow me to make critical support of Obama. And if I could do that, then I can go with the collective. So when I finished my presentation and I listened to Glenn and I listened to Nellie and I listened to Daruba and I finished mine, Glenn and Daruba came up to me and said, brother, we're going to use some of your stuff to make our position. And from that point on, we understood that there are differences sometimes on strategies and tactics and how much of pragmatism you're going to engage in the electoral arena. But I said, who is this Glen Ford? I've never heard of him. Where is he coming from? You know, who is he? Where did he come from? And I just left it at that. And then as I got more involved with the African People's Socialist Party and the congresses that occurred, and as I got more involved in the Black is Back coalition, matter of fact, I even went on the demonstration at the White House against Obama, didn't support him the second time around. And then coming to the Black is Back coalition and the school, our electoral school, our radical electoral college school, that's when I got to talk to Glenn more. And I got to listen to his presentations. And then those moments that we had, and there were precious moments when we had to leave and go back to the airport together. And we had deep conversations, and I really got to understand, and he got to understand me. And by the way, even though we had our differences there, every time he said something about me or wrote something about me, he held me in high esteem and in a very positive way, regardless of our political differences on that single issue. Because when we got to know each other, we really didn't have any deep, profound political differences. We both were revolutionaries, anti-imperialism, anti-capitalism, and we really got to know each other better. And I remember one time he did such an excellent presentation on electoral politics at one of the Black is Back, or one of the electoral politics, radical electoral school that we built in with the Uhuru movement and the African People's Socialist Party. And he had like about 10 handwritten papers on yellow pad papers, about 10 of them. And I said, man, Brother Glenn, man, that was kind of deep, man. I know you probably have it on computer somewhere. So if you can get me a copy of that, I'd really appreciate it. He said, take this. So he gave me his handwritten copies, and that was his only copy. He said, brother, I want you to have this. And so he gave me that, and I was reading it over and studying it because he is a brilliant intellectual and he does his research. So you can rest assured that if you get notes from Glen Ford, you're going to have some profound empirical notes that you can use as a weapon for our liberation. So I am honored to come here today to say he's going to be missed. And I was so shocked and saddened when I heard about his transition, because we were just getting to know each other. And I used to look forward to the times where I could talk to him and ask him some questions and challenging some of his political beliefs. And he challenged some of mine, but it always resulted in us bringing us closer together rather than further apart. So I say today, Uhuru, Glen Ford, and rest in peace, my brother, for a job well done when you served us here on earth. Rest in peace. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Brother Charles Barron, thank you so much for your participation in this commemoration webinar of Glen Ford, and we appreciate your reflections of our comrade as well. And we will move now to our sister, Afia Mwangaza of the Malcolm X Center for Self-Determination. Uhuru, Afia.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. There you go.
Uhuru. I want to thank the Uhuru movement, Chairman Omali, for this opportunity to be in community with those of us who knew and worked with Comrade Glen Ford. I want to express my condolences and my deep appreciation to Nia Rutherford, his daughter, for joining us and sharing not only her words with us, but over so many years, having shared her father with us. Glen, like myself, grew up understanding the power of radio and of the spoken word. My father having been a minister, a Garveyite, and organizing a movement for the uplift and liberation of African people. Glen was a principled, consistent reporter, journalist, freedom fighter, organizer, and lover. Lover of humanity generally and Black people specifically. His tagline, information for liberation, was embodied in his every activity. His groundbreaking and insightful work reflected his knowledge of history, his ability to identify recurring phenomenon, the courage to call them out and name the phenomenon and the players, its impact on Black people, and our need to respond appropriately. He often called asking me, what are you up to these days? Looking for evidence of new ideas, emerging threats, and our rising resistance. He nurtured budding ideas and voices. He, along with BAR's co-founder, Bruce Dixon, supported the founding and the development of WMXP Community Radio here in Greenville, South Carolina. And our last call, in the midst of the hoopla and hullabaloo over the US government's legalizing or federalizing Juneteenth, he called and said, what are you doing for Juneteenth? I said, well, here we'll be having a rally demanding reparations. We are holding a demonstration at the local Confederate memorial, calling for reparations and operational unity in the community. That the various tendencies that exist on a national level also exist in South Carolina, where 40% of our ancestors were brought in to North America for the purposes of enslavement. We discussed those various tendencies, and he indicated, in fact, he grilled me with regard to my position on some aspects of the demands that we were making in our call for operational unity. Recorded the interview and broadcasted it the following Monday, which we, of course, simulcast here in Greenville on a weekly basis. Like Marcia, it never occurred to me that that would be my last conversation with our dear warrior brother, Glen Ford. It is a moment that I will hold dear for the rest of my life as I think about and continue my lifelong work for the liberation of African people and the pursuit of reparations to ensure our ultimate victory and wholeness. I say, Glen Ford, Comrade Glen Ford, Ashe, Ashe, Asheo. All power to the people.
Uhuru, Comrade Afia, thank you so much for your contribution, your reflections of Comrade Glen Ford. We really appreciate your presence here this evening. And I would like to now invite up Sister Nellie Bailey of the Harlem Fight Back Against War at Home and Abroad. Uhuru, Sister Nellie, welcome to the program. Sister Nellie Bailey, can you unmute and turn your camera on for us, please? There we go. I can see you now. Just need you to unmute. There we go.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. So much has been said about Glen Ford, an intellectual giant, a man of principle, integrity that I saw not only in Black Agenda Report, but also what is unknown perhaps to many, his activism, that side of his intellectual genius that I saw in Harlem, and his profound love for Black people, which is power to the people, all power to the people. I first met Glen Ford, as has been alluded to by the chairman and also by Marcia Coleman Adebayo, but really it goes back to the euphoria that swept through all sectors of the progressive community, the Black community, Black progressive community, the Black left community, in addition to progressives. But unlike many, I was not caught up in this euphoria. I knew instinctively that Barack Obama, to the tune of $1 billion, more money that had been spent on any presidential campaign, was selected and most likely would be elected by the US ruling class. And for those Blacks who, again, caught up in this euphoria to the point that they crafted a message of Barack Obama is giving us a wink and a nod, when in fact the wink and a nod was to the US ruling class. As the chairman has alluded to, I met him, Glen. My organization at the time was the Harlem Tenants Council, and we sponsored a series of forums on Obama mania, as we called it at the time. And I was looking desperately for allies. I knew about the Uhuru movement. I knew that Obama had been confronted, but I needed someone close by in New York who could engage in panel discussions to give people an analysis of who Barack Obama was, which goes back to his time at the Harvard Law Review. So I looked around, I was feeling alone, and that desperation that can come with that. And I thought of the Black Agenda Report. And I called Glen Ford and he said, sure. I told him that there was a panel discussion on the other side. An ardent supporter of Barack Obama was the late Amiri Baraka. So this forum was held at the Malcolm X Shabazz Center in Washington Heights. So Glenn was a little late and I was outside. I was somewhat anxious because, again, I desperately needed an ally. So I'm looking up and down, and then finally I see this guy. I thought he was younger because he was sort of ageless in a way, and the debate began. We had a standing room crowd only, people out of the door of that center. And I won't go into details, but Glenn won the debate hands down, to the point that Baraka said to me, I will never, ever appear with Glen Ford on anything that you do. Well, that was okay with me. So from there, I became involved in Black Agenda Report, but because time is of the essence, I would like to discuss with you Glen Ford, the man of immaculate principles as a warrior, deeply embedded in the liberation of Black people. So I like to share with you, everyone, a number of activities that Glenn participated in Harlem. First of all, we had dinner because Glenn was forever about giving this national as well as international context in terms of ethnic cleansing, ethnic displacement. And so he agreed to meet, and he'd spoken to her before, the tenant leader of the Delano Village, AKA Savoy Park Tenants Association. It's over 1,700 units in 7 buildings. And the person whom we were meeting with or having dinner with was Valerie Aldrich, who was the president of that the largest tenants association practically in New York City, organized tenants association. And Glenn was really amazing. He had the patience of Job. He listened, and then he began to give context in terms of our struggle, our tenant struggle, that it was not local, but it was international. And we had to have that geopolitical context in terms of US imperialism. It was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating. And let me go on to 2 other instances of Glen Ford in Harlem. And I would like to go to 2012. 2012, when Barack Obama appeared at the Apollo Theater, and he was inside the theater crooning Al Green. Well, I was outside the theater picketing, and who was there with support and talking to the crowd but Glen Ford. That was his action in Harlem. And let me point out another instance where we had this march, not march, but rather our 5-year campaign against Columbia University and its expansion in historic West Harlem. And of course, the communities targeted for their expansion were in fact Black and Latino working class neighborhoods. So we were trying to get the story out, and this was a 5-year struggle against Columbia University and its very powerful president, who at the time was chair of the New York Federal Reserve. So Glenn was there with us in that struggle against Columbia University, and we wanted additional PR, national PR. And Glen said, I know just the person. And he called The Real News. And they came up and they did in our program on our fight against Columbia University's expansion. So that was the Glen Ford that I knew, in addition to his absolute brilliance. It was amazing to see him just sit down and write out his speech, as Charles Barron pointed out. It was just amazing. It was as if raindrops of words fell from his head into a political coherency that gave you an understanding of U.S. imperialism, and within that context, the fight for Black liberation, national revolutionary nationalism of any self-determining body, any self-determining country. And I learned so much from him. I learned so much from his partner, Bruce Dixon. I would call Glen up and he would talk to me. Nellie, what do you think? And he actually sought out my opinion. It was so amazing because so many so-called intellectuals on the left, they are not concerned about the analysis, let's say, of an organizer. But that's where it was at, because if there is no engagement with the people, with working class people, with Black, Puerto Rican, brown, and all working class people, then it is all about theory and not about practice. And that is why the Uhuru movement, that is why Chairman Omali and Glen are so important, because these are the forces that hold our feet to the ground. You have to be sincere. You have to be principled. You can't just talk about the struggle outside the context of your engagement. If it's not there, then it's not real. So I could go on and on about Glen. He would call me kid, and when we did the radio program at Gary Knowles' studio on 84th Street, we would go to a place and we would sit and talk and stuff like that. But I learned so much from him, and he bore with me of all of the patience and the kindness of my my vision problem, and he understood. And for that, I appreciate his appreciation of me as a person worthy of intellectual content and intellectual engagement, pretty much like the chairman. No pretenses, no looking down, no elitist and attitude about who and what a person is. And at the same time, as I repeat myself, no engagement whatsoever with working class people. And for that, I appreciate this intellectual giant, his undying love for the people. And as Marshall Coleman Adebayo pointed out rather eloquently, he fought until the very end. And for that, we love him, we are proud of him, and we will never forget this giant. The people in Harlem who work with me will never forget him. And I thank you for the opportunity to be able to share these thoughts with you. Thank you.
Uhuru, Sister Nellie Bailey, thank you so much for your contribution and just showing, the powerful and the committed work that Glen Ford contributed to our struggle. Really appreciate your participation this evening. And now we'll move it to Comrade Zaki Baroudi, who is the President General of the Universal African Peoples Organization. Uhuru and welcome, Brother Zaki Baroudi.
Uhuru, and in the spirit of Glen Ford, power to the people. I want to first give my remarks in regards to the theme that the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree in respect to the powerfulness of Nia as personified by her father work. It speaks well that she would go forward in terms of the message that he constantly tried to echo in our community. I did not know Glen Ria personally, and I met him on a number of occasions, of course, through the Black is Back Coalition, but I was greatly impacted by his oratorical and intellectual insightfulness on the issues impacting our people through the wickedness of capitalism and imperialism and the perspective that he brought forth in the many gatherings that the Black is Back Coalition will hold. Also, though, I failed to mention, I want to salute the African People's Socialist Party for putting together this salute to their comrade, our comrade, as we hold high his intellectual warriorness on behalf of our people. Glen understood the motto, educate to liberate, because without properly educating our people, they would not engage in the true struggle for the liberation of us as a people. So we must always salute him for that powerful understanding of educate to liberate, to liberate. Also, I'm struck by the fact that truth shall set you free. And Glen will always speak truthness to the reality facing our people. You know, in my remarks, as I was thinking about Glen, as he entered into the world of the ancestors, I'm thinking in terms of the great giants, such as the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, Brother Malcolm X, Huey P. Newton, George Jackson, France, the intellectual giant Frantz Fanon, Chancellor Williams, Karl Marx, the powerful leaders for the liberation of us as a people, Patrice Lumumba, Muammar Gaddafi, Amilcar Cabral, Robert Mugabe, Fidel Castro, Che Guevara. As he transitioned into his ancestry, they were holding a party for him. So be with great spirit, Nia, that your father set a great historic mark here while he was amongst us. And I just want to say one last thing from hearing the accolades and the great work that he personified. You know, our life, and this paraphrasing from the early 70s, if we were to put our life on a scale of life and what we have done, some people's lives in terms of weight would be like that of a fly. But I think in terms of the kind of great work that your father has personified, his weight would be that of a lion or that of an elephant. That's the greatness of the person that we are saluting. And it's in that spirit that I want to just salute Brother Glen, salute the African People's Socialist Party, salute his daughter, because the struggle continues. And if you truly believe in his legacy, then we all got to fight for liberation in our lifetime. Say, may God be with you and continue to bless you, Sister Nia, and the community by which he represented for the liberation of us as a people. Thank you.
Uhuru, thank you, Brother Zaki Baruti. Really appreciate your participation and those words that you've provided tonight for tonight's commemoration. So now we will move to close out our reflections will be Sister Belinda Parker Brown, who is the CEO of Louisiana United International. Uhuru, Sister Belinda.
Hororo, 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 hororo. And salute to my brother, comrade, Glen Ford. Wow. This have been great. Just listening to everyone's comments on how profound this brother was and what he really meant to this type of movement. So salute to my brother. You know, I just want to say that, you know, I heard Glen before I met Glen. He was on C-SPAN and his voice was so unique that you will never, ever forget the voice that didn't quite match up with the face. But that was Glen. And when I did have the opportunity to meet my brother, I'm not sure if I'm coming through. I hope I am. But, you know, very small frame man. I mean, just look at this little statue of a man and have this big old giant gorilla voice coming out of him was so impressive to me. Because, you know, it's something about when you can hear someone speak and they really mean what they say. And Glen just didn't he just didn't talk about it. He was about it. And that meant so much to me being a part of such a movement with the Black is Back coalition, to just know that somebody like him would be a founder and a part of such a powerful movement. You know, he inspired me so much to the fact that you have to know when you're winning. And if you was a type of person that would listen to Glen, you really didn't have to know nothing, because if you didn't know and you would take the time out to listen to him, you can say, well, now I know. And to me, that was, wow, that was very powerful, because you would always go away knowing that you have been a part of something, or you have participated in something, a debate or whatever it was with him, that you would never be the same. So, you know, I just want to say that we are winning. You know, our brother have transitioned, and just to see his daughter, you know, Nina, my very first time meeting her, to come on and give such a profound, you know, statement about her dad and the legacy that he have left for us, and the torch that he have passed to us in a movement that is bound to shake up the whole world. I just want to say that Glen, he demonstrated integrity. I mean, it was, you know, how can I say it? It was all, you know, he was just a person of a relational person, and a public relation. I mean, just a wealth of information. And I want to say that when we talk about, you know, his transition and you know, not being a visible part of this great work that we're doing as comrades and soldiers, real soldiers in this movement, it really inspires me to the point where I know that we're in high expectation, you know, great expectation that we can have a legacy from somebody like Glen Ford to hold on to continue to fight, to be inspired to fight, to be energized to fight. You know, I just want to say that it's so important that we understand the strengths that we have now more than ever, knowing that it's a game and knowing how to move in this game. It's not a check-it game, it's a chess game, knowing how to make the moves, the right moves, and use the wealth of information and the understanding, because I know that whenever I would listen to my brother Glen, I know that he was a teacher, you know, he was an educator, you know, he was putting out very, I mean, just strategic information on how to move and shake in this movement. So with that said, I just want to say, it's just, if you don't know, now you know. And if you don't understand the game that we're in, and when Glen came about to unite us in this Black is Back coalition, his whole mission was how we're going to move and shake together to win. And on that note, I just want to say that we understand that we are really, really winning. And, you know, I just want to give all of my sincere condolence to his daughter, you know, all of my comrades, all of his friends, and you know, people that loved him and appreciate him. That is the beginning of a new horizon in order to take his legacy to another whole frequency in this movement. So I'm excited that I can participate and be a part of such a commitment to Glen, and listen to all of my other comrades that loved him and appreciate him, and that we can carry this on, and just know that Glen is very proud of us, and that he's watching, and he's you know, still a part. Even his presence is not with us physically, but spiritually, I know for a fact he knows that we are winning, and I'm excited about that. So thank you so much for giving me the time to share about such a great brother that I come to love very, very much. Thank you.
Uhuru, Sister Belinda, thank you so much for your contribution, and to all of you for, you know, your profound statements, your reflections of Comrade Glen Ford, and, you know, allowing us to honor his life and his legacy tonight. And we are broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube, and there are others who, you know, wanted to weigh in and send their salutes to Brother Glen Ford, his family, his friends, and comrades as well. We have Carmen Mazzamela in California, long live Glen Ford. Bakri in California, long live Glen Ford. Deputy Chair Omali Yeshitela, the Deputy Chairwoman of the African People's Socialist Party, says salute to Glen Ford. Comrade Lisa Davis in New Jersey comments, Uhuru, long live our fierce revolutionary freedom fighter. Comrade Matum in Philadelphia says revolutionary salute to Glen Ford. Loved seeing him writing on his pad all the time and took many photos of him doing the work on the ground. We'll never forget him, his black beret and leather jacket. Comrade Kobina, the Southern Regional Representative of the African People's Socialist Party in Huntsville, comments, long live Glen Ford. Comrade Raya in St. Louis, Missouri says, Uhuru solidarity salute, long live Glen Ford, presente. Comrade Sandy in California says, long live Glen Ford, victory to the African Revolution. Black Foods Bookstore and Culture Shop, Chara Walker in Nassau, Bahamas says, Uhuru, long live Glen Ford. Comrade Dennis in New Orleans says, Uhuru family, long live Glen Ford. Comrade Fofeet in St. Louis says, Uhuru, long live Comrade Glen Ford. Comrade Aisha, the director of the All African People's Development and Empowerment Project in Huntsville says, long live Comrade Glen Ford. Middleside Topwise username on YouTube says, let's show some love for Comrade Ford. Word from the Point username on YouTube says, revolutionary greetings, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Uhuru, may Baba Glen Ford rest in power. J.M. Harris on Facebook says, long live the works of the comrade warrior, scribe Baba Glen Ford, he inspired me. Sister Doris on Facebook says, never forgotten. Patrice on Facebook says, love you and Glenn, Sister Nia. Comrade Kiangozi in Washington, D.C. says, long live Glen Ford. Comrade King on Facebook says, salute to the one and only Glen Ford. So many words come to mind to describe the surgical analyst, enlightened teacher, and brilliant speaker who will miss his contribution to African people. Comrade Penny Hess, the chairwoman of the African People Solidarity Committee, says, Uhuru and saluting the revolutionary work of Glen Ford. Comrade Basel says, Uhuru and rest in power, Brother Glen Ford. Wandering Leopard username on YouTube says, Uhuru, very sad to learn of the passing of Brother Glen Ford. And Norman Jalali Richmond, the host of Diasporic Music in Toronto, Canada, says, Glen Ford came to Toronto several times. He spoke about international issues. So those are some of our comments shared with us by those watching on Facebook and on YouTube today. So thank you, comrades, for contributing to this program as well with your words. I'm going now we will have Chairman Omali Yeshitela to close us out, but before I introduce the chairman back to leave us with our closing remarks, I want to announce the upcoming Black is Back annual conference, to which Glen Ford was a founding member, as we mentioned. The conference is themed, Deepening the Resistance to Police Terror, Honoring Our Political Prisoners and Prisoners of War, Black Community Control of the Police. This conference takes place this weekend, August 7th to 8th. There will be another commemoration at the conference with the Black is Back steering committee members. You can register to attend this conference, as well as learn more about the Black is Back Coalition at blackisbackcoalition.org. I'm extremely humbled and honored to have been your MC for this evening. And I just want to say long live Glen Ford once more, and for the African Revolution. And I will now turn it back over to the leadership of the Global African Revolution, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Uhuru, Chairman.
Uhuru, Comrade Akile, can you unmute Sister Nia?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, and yeah, can you make it visible also?
There she is, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to do that. And again, we just want to embrace you, Sister Nia. We truly do. And listening to you speak, I was thinking to myself, who said Glen is gone? You know, but also, can you share information with everybody about services? I know there's a memorial schedule, and I know there's a burial that will be happening in Georgia. I think memorial perhaps in someplace else, perhaps in New York, I'm not sure. Can you share
So we don't yet have the information for the memorial. As soon as we have that information, we'll share it. The memorial will be in New York City. It is likely to be at in the beginning of September. So we will absolutely publish that information with you, and you can get it out to the folks.
Splendid. Well, thank you so much. I just wanted to have you have an opportunity to share what information you had on that that could be shared at this point. And also, I just think it's extremely good to be able to embrace you, and I wanted everybody to have an opportunity to do that. And brothers and sisters and comrades, we knew, in many ways, we knew Glen Ford from different perspectives and in different circumstances. But one thing, there's several things that's come throughout this entire process. And one of this is the integrity of the man, the love that he had for the people, the determination that he displayed in terms of how we had to be free. People spoke, also about, he was a perfectionist when it came to his craft. He believed in it very seriously. And so that's extremely important. And everybody who was on here, it was notable to me anyway, just how these were not just, these were people who are engaged in struggle. Serious people who had a relationship with Glen, who were affected by Glen, and who in turn, I'm sure, affected Glen. But people who engaged in struggle, serious struggle in Louisiana, under most extraordinary kinds of circumstances, and in Missouri, Comrade Zaki Baruti, the work that he's done there forever on the ground is not just some group of people who have come together simply to make hollow kinds of statements, but people who are actually engaged and have been engaged in some instances for many, many years in trying to liberate our people. And that was the company that Glen Ford kept. And one of the things that contributes to our understanding of his significance is the fact that it was through him in many ways that we've come to have a relationship with each other. So I wanted to thank everybody for being here. And like I said in the beginning, I know that there are other events and commemorations that will be done, have been done for Glen, but I wanted us to be able to do this from the African People's Socialist Party, because for whatever other reasons that people may come to support and remember Glen, we remember Glen as part and parcel, as active participant in the struggle to destroy our oppression, to liberate our people, and to destroy colonial capitalism once and forever. So I want to thank everybody for coming and sharing this with us. We loved Glen Ford. I love Glen Ford. And you heard people in this meeting speak of their love for Glen Ford. Some of them had not even known him long or hadn't met him personally in some ways, but were affected by him. And that's very, 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 very important. So in the name of the African People's Socialist Party, the Central Committee of our organization, I want to express appreciation to all of you who've come here. And I also just want to restate the significance that Glen Ford had and will continue to have in the struggle of our people. Not the least of this significance being the fact that our movement, when it was crushed and defeated, it was not just an attack on people physically, which was one aspect of it, or even organizations physically. That was a really part of it, but it was an attack on ideas. And it was an attack on science in terms of struggle. And we've had a movement that's been crippled for a long period of time because it was not armed with theory, with philosophy, with ideology, and with a scientific approach to analysis and investigation. Glen Ford was a critical factor in contributing that to our struggle. And this is one of the reasons that we love him so much in the African People's Socialist Party. And what we say is what's been said already over and over during this meeting is that to really memorialize Glen Ford, then we should live like Glen and make the revolution. As Sister Adebayo mentioned, how he fought to the very end, that's our responsibility as well. And he was a very serious person about this struggle, about this revolution. He was not frivolous at all when it came to that, nor can we be. And these are things that we want to remember about Comrade Glen Ford. And again, let's live like Glen. And thank you, everybody, for coming on. Thank you, Comrade Sister Akile, for hosting this discussion that we've had around Comrade Glen, and all of you incredible forces who have participated in this. And people don't even know about you who were here, don't know your history and the contributions you've made to this struggle, which is one of the reasons it's really important for you to be here as well. So thank you, everybody, and thank all of the people who have participated in watching this from whatever platforms you're using as well. And just want to say and unite with Comrade Belinda Parker Brown, we are winning, uhuru.